All right, so we are towards the end of chapter 15. So let's review the last section we were up to, and then we will explain the last part of the chapter. So we were talking in this chapter about working on yourself, about the process of refinement, which the term for it is avoida. Avoida means work. Avoida could be chopping wood, work. But avoida in the Hasidic lexicon means the process of self-work, of self-growth. And we connected it to the term oiros avudim, which means worked hides. And we said you take an animal hide, an animal, coarse animal, and you work and work and work that leather until it could become the parchment of a Torah. So we took an animal and from there made a Torah. That's the growth. That's refinement. And that's the movement of each one of us. As each one of us works and grows and changes and becomes more and more godly, that through us we see reflected God's light. That's the process of refinement. So in this chapter, we spoke about various people on this road. We spoke of the tzaddik, the person who has completely refined himself to the degree that he's called Eved Havaya, Eved, the servant, one who's completed the avoida. He now wears the title of Eved. We spoke of the Beinoni, the person who's doing an awesome job and has complete control of everything he does and says and thinks. But he's in the work. He's doing the work because he's struggling. He's called an Oived, one who's in the process of the work, struggling, controlling, changing, refining. But we said there could be a Beinoni who's called a non-working Beinoni, a lo avada. We said that non-working Beinoni was a person who didn't have to push so hard because he's more naturally inclined because of his personality to doing what God wants.
Mrs. Turin?
Yes, Firma.
I have a question. Is everything, like, can everything be, like, what is it called? What did you say? Sorry. Refined. Can everything, like, is there anything that cannot be refined, like, brought to holiness?
Something that's innately evil, which means it has its life source from what we call the 3 levels of absolute impurity. Our process of refinement of it and ourselves through it is rejection. So if I am tempted by something that's forbidden, by rejecting the item, that's the only way I can create some level of quasi-refinement in the item and in myself through it. But it's not the true refinement of the item, because that would mean taking it out of its status of evil, of a blockage of godliness, and we don't have the ability to do that.
When Mashiach
God will do that by Mashiach. That's one of the famous verses we quote, that when Mashiach comes, God says, "Es ruach hatuma a'avir min ha'aretz," which means the spirit of impurity, I, God, will remove from the world. He will get rid of all evil. We can't. But when we are tempted and don't give in, we are refining it. So what is evil? Anything God forbade, anything the rabbis forbade. So we have 365 biblical commandments, all of which are embodying evil, and we have tens of thousands of rabbinic. So let's say God said, you can't gossip. And let's say you like to talk about other people and you control yourself and you don't do it. That's the only way, and of course it's a very indirect way, you can refine that evil of gossip. It's indirect. You're not directly able to deal with it, but it is happening to a certain degree, and yourself, you are to a certain degree changing yourself by that process, because the fact that you're not giving into that evil is a shift for you in a positive direction. So it's a catalyst for your own growth, and for the item that you're rejecting, it's the only way we can refine it now. So it is a somewhat refinement. It's not like taking something that's, not necessarily godly, not necessarily evil, and using it for godly. If you take a cell phone and you use it as a tool for godliness, all of your computers saturated with all these Zoom classes, my gosh. Imagine that computer lucked out. You pulled it off the shelf of Best Buy and not the one next to it. Because that item, which is not innately godly and is not innately forbidden, becomes so saturated with godliness because of the way you're using it to bring godliness in this world. So you're tremendously moving that item and yourself as well. But when you reject the gossip, you're somewhat lessening the intensity of the evil of it. Because you don't go into it, you're weakening its grip. And therefore, that is, in essence, somewhat of a refinement. So we're talking about these levels of Beinonim, and we spoke about the Beinoni who by personality, nature, likes to follow rules, likes to study, isn't so tempted. And we said, oh, he's a pretty natural at serving God. Of course, if he didn't have love and fear of God, he could follow America's rules. He could study mathematics. You know, he could be a homebody, old fogey. Doesn't mean he's be a godly person. So obviously he does love and fear God, that he takes all these qualities and with it serves God, but it's not as difficult. And then we spoke about the person who starts off all into all the things that make it difficult to serve God and says, I want to change. I want to become like that guy that has it a lot easier. I want to change my personality. And we discussed that you can change your personality by acting the other way, putting your mask on very securely and acting differently many, many, many times. And it really actually does change you. And we said that person then changes and has it much easier. But he might decide, and this was a segue to the last piece we're discussing, he might decide, you know what? I want to give God more. And that's what we're discussing, the concept of things are good, things are great, life is wonderful. I'm a Beinoni, but I want to give God more. And how does one do that? And so now I'm that was a brief overview of most of the chapter. And I just like to dedicate the class as I wrote on the group for a woman who unfortunately is a mother of 8, pregnant with her 9th, and right now in a very, very, very critical situation with corona. Unfortunately, she was intubated yesterday, and it's a very, very significant situation. Ruchama Rina Basia Bas Shifra Ruth should have a complete healing. She should be healthy. Her baby should be healthy, and she should come back to her strength. Absolutely.
Can you say the name again?
Yes. Ruchama Rina Basia Bas Shifra Ruth.
Amen. Refuah Shlema immediately. Mashiach now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, so we're talking about giving God more, which is a point that, of course, is relevant for all of us because obviously we're such wonderful people. We even attend Tanya at 8:30 at night when we could be doing other things. But you know what? We can always have this feeling of I want to give God more. And that's the movement, as we discussed last week, of going from being 100 to 101. And we said, where do we get these numbers, 100 and 101? That's pretty huge numbers, pretty intimidating numbers. Because we said, well, in those days, it wasn't so intimidating. 100 was how often people reviewed their studies. So that wasn't intimidating, that was normal. But if you want to give God more, you got to go beyond 100. So what's beyond 100? 100 plus 1. If I'm already doing 100 times, what difference does it make 101? Makes a world of difference. Why? Because even though it might sound funny, but the way we're wired, it's really hard for us to do more than we're used to doing. So you could say, oh my gosh, reviewing something 100 times, that must have taken 5 hours. So 5 hours and 5 hours and 10 minutes, what's the difference? But it is, it's like, okay, I'm done. No, you're not, keep walking. That's really hard. And that's why we understand that the terms 100 and 101 don't have to be as intimidating as they sound, because for us, we really translate it to mean 100 means our norm, whatever our norm is, and 101 means anything that goes beyond your norm. Anything that means more than you've been doing until now. That's your 101. And we said when we do so, it shifts everything. It doesn't just shift that issue, it shifts everything. We quoted the Maharsha who said, because the metaphor that was given in the Talmud for this concept is taking a donkey that normally gets hired for 10 miles a day and asking him to walk an 11th mile. And the donkey owner says, you want my donkey for 11 miles, double money. Why such a ripoff? because he has to walk faster the whole day to get in the 11th mile, which the Marsha is saying means there's a faster movement all day long, which means when you add and demand more of yourself, and of course we chewed over this topic extensively last week, and I hope people saw that it carried through for the week, it changes the whole day. It really does. Does anyone have what to share on that, since we did discuss this extensively last week, how we get ourselves to do more and getting more? Tivi said, how do we stretch ourselves without burning out? Tivi, you should speak to Firma. She'll give you guidance. Wait, before going to Tivi's question, did anyone apply it over the week? Since we talked, I had this beautiful verbringen in Rebbe and Stern Asar Zuchus, and a lot of very practical, beautiful things were said. Well, hopefully it means people did, but they're just not sharing. All right, so Tivi's saying, how do you do more without burning out? People can give different answers. My answer would be, first, choose wisely what you're doing more. Don't do more in a way that you feel resentful, that you feel burdened and overwhelmed and pressured into doing more, because then you could burn out because you're just doing with an unhappy attitude. You're not feeling good about it. But do more in a place that it's going to give you joy to see that accomplishment, and that you feel that stretch and you feel so good about it. You know, if one of your children just started getting up early in the morning, the kid that can never get out of bed, and run, taking a jog, a hike, a walk, and they're so happy, they're so proud of themselves, and you're thinking, this kid, she's never get up for carpool, and suddenly she's getting up at 6 a.m. But they're so happy with it. They feel so good about it. So they're doing more, but it's a more in a place that makes them feel really good that they're stretching that way, because they're as into fitness as their friends, or they're going to look so great, or they feel so healthy, or they're all energized. So that's really what we're looking for. We're looking for a stretch in a place that you really appreciate that growth. And then instead of feeling burnt out, you can feel, wow, I can't believe I accomplished that. I never thought I'd be able to really say machitas. I never thought I'd be able to be warm and friendly to her. I never thought I could light candles on time. And I give myself such full marks. I'm so happy that I'm achieving this, that I think that instead of the burnout, you feel the rush of the accomplishment. Any other answers to that question? That was mine, and I definitely don't have a copyright on it. Any other ideas? How you add without burning out?
You have to know yourself, and you have to know how to deal with your, you know how much you can handle. And you shouldn't really push yourself too hard. A little bit, yes, but not too hard.
+1. We're not saying +10, we're not saying +20, we're saying +1.
I
Anything
also-
that's even past your limits is already the push. Just as long as it's past your limits.
I also think maybe if you remember why you wanted to take it on in the first place, that's just a really good, keep reminding yourself, the reason, your goal, I think that really helps you, and that helps me.
Right. So that's part of the joy factor. My goal is to become this, and this is a building block in that direction. And if I keep syncing with my goal, then this is worth it. It's working toward that goal. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense for me. Just like in our learning now, we're almost finished the chapter. We are concluding chapter 15 today. There is a purpose. There is a point. Oh, okay, good. Now let me come along, Anyone else? Any other ideas? Those were both very good. Definitely, MSPA helps because they can help guide you to what to take on and when to take it on and how much to take it on, how to take it on. Anyone else? Any other ideas along these lines? Okay, I think that was all really practical. And of course, Sivi added a very practical and appropriate point herself. And definitely a mashpia, a mentor is very, very valuable when you're growing, to tell you, go more, stop, halt, don't add more now. So definitely that helps. Okay. So we are up to, I believe, like 6 lines from the bottom, and we are finishing the chapter today. We are in the last class that we're giving on chapter 15 because we are finishing it. And therefore, since this time means the time when you go past your limits, which is difficult for all of us, not only difficult as maybe what Sivi said resonated in, like, yeah, I'm so overwhelmed. Yeah, I'm so stretched. You don't have to be overwhelmed. You don't have to be stretched. The person who's not overwhelmed and not stretched still has a hard time going past their limits. It's just how we're wired. We're creatures of habit, and we go this far and we stop. So therefore, that one time that is beyond the habits that you've acquired, that you've been habituated to from your youth, shkula keneged kulan, is equal to all of them. Listen to what the Rebbe is saying here. This person studies something. We're talking about a literal fact. In our days, it sounds like a fairy tale, but in the times of the Talmud, this was a literal truth. Anything they studied, they reviewed 100 times. So I'm saying, let's say it was something that 100 times reviewing it took them, I don't know, whatever it was. Maybe something that took them 20 hours. If we're assuming it's 20 minutes of review for that subject. Maybe. Yeah, 5 times 20 is 100. Maybe. I don't know. So let's say 20 hours to review something 100 times. And now, to get that 101st time, they're reviewing 20 more minutes. So it's 20 hours and then 20 minutes. And the Rebbe is saying...
20 is not an hour, is 60 minutes, not 100.
Okay, so forgive my math. I don't know. I did that on the top of my head. If it was 100 times 20 minutes, whatever, it'd be 2,000 minutes. All right, so it's more. Yes, it's rising. It's like 32 hours. Okay, it's a little over 32 hours. Thank you for correcting and making sure I said the math correctly. 32 hours you just spent reviewing something. 32 hours. And now you review it 20 more minutes. The Alter Rebbe is writing that those 20 minutes are equal to all 32 plus hours. And then he says, and actually, those 20 minutes are more valued than all those 32 hours. It's like, what? It's that valuable because it's completely shifting you. As the Rebbe says, Lihios Nikra Ovid Elokim. Because with these 20 minutes, you became an Ovid. Understand the concept. Envision this Talmudic scholar that literally learned something for 32 hours. And then he pushed himself and learned it for 20 more minutes. And the Rebbe says, those 20 minutes are more valuable than all 32 hours. They're equal to them. They're actually much more. Because they completely shifted your status. You're a different person, not because of the 32 hours. 32 hours are wonderful. You're a wonderful person. But those 20 minutes shifted your status. They made you from a non-ish worker to a worker. That title of worker was achieved by breaking past your nature. So with us, if you can imagine someone who, I don't know, we can think of any realm. Someone who every Shabbos Mevorachim says 5 chapters of Psalms, of Tehillim. And she said to us, you know, this one, I'm going to do 6. And when you finish the 5, you're like, I'm done. For the last 20 years of my life, I said 5, and I always felt very virtuous because I'm part of a group and whatever I told myself. I felt very good about myself. Complete, total, whole. A lot of my friends don't do it. They say 1, they say none, I say 5. So it was a tremendous psychological effort to say that one more. And that's why it's so valuable. So someone else looking says, oh, so now you said 6. I think, other people are saying for 2 hours and it's saying 150. But for you to shift from 5 to 6 was huge. That's the point the rep is making. And that's why, going back to what Sivi said about burnout, it's not the quantity of the addition that's significant. How can you compare 20 minutes to 32 hours? The quantity isn't the factor here. Anything that gets us past our limits is a force of will that's changing us. And that's why it's so valuable. It could be something in halacha, in Jewish law, where you allowed yourself to do this. And some people say you can, but some people say you can't. But you just allowed yourself to do that. And you say, no, I'm not going to allow myself to do that anymore. Well, it's hard. Why? Because you've done it that way for so long. You allow yourself to gossip only with your husband or only about your husband. But you allowed yourself to do it. Those are your boxes. So getting out of a box is hard. It doesn't have to be a quantitative hardness. It doesn't have to take a lot of time. But it's a certain will, as the Rebbe says. Why are we equating 20 minutes with over 32 hours? Because in order to change your nature, in order to get past your personally created boxes, you have to feel a love for Hashem, meaning there has to be just cause. We could reference back to what Fruma told us a few minutes ago when Sivi was saying, how don't you have burnout? And I gave my answer, and Leva said correctly, know yourself, don't push too hard. And Fruma said, remember why you're doing it. Because if you keep your eyes on the goal, right? You look straight ahead. We all know the famous story with Reb Mendel Futchefas and the tightrope walker. When you keep your eyes on the goal, where you're going, you'll keep moving in that direction. So what is motivating my breaking out of my limits? A love for God, a desire to be close to Him, a desire to be one with Him, a desire to be more godlike, a desire to give Him nachas, a desire to bring Mashiach and have Him revealed in this world. So if I keep my eyes on that goal, that's what this is all about. That keeps me walking in sync. That keeps me focused. So for me to get past my limits, even though quantitatively I might not be doing a lot, and I don't need to do a lot. That's the Rebbe's point. I don't need to do a lot. I just need to break past what I'm used to doing. I need to escape those barriers. I have to really get in touch with my goal, that I love God, and that's why I'm doing this. So I have to arouse that love for God by contemplating the greatness of God in my mind. And through this, I have to control that nature, my limits, me, as it's experienced in the left side of the heart, the side full of blood, the side full of the animal, the side full of the evil forces. That's where I have this idea of nature. So the Rebbe is saying how we define ourselves, or the smallness with which we define ourselves, is all a manifestation of animal soul. Obviously, we could define ourselves in godly terms, but most of us define ourselves by our problems. I can't do that. I could never do this. I won't do this. I'm not good at that. It's sort of interesting because it says that when Mashiach comes, all evil will be gone, as we just quoted earlier today. So the question is, when all evil is gone, what's left? What's left? What are you when all evil is gone? When all those the limitations and the weaknesses and the can'ts and won'ts and don'ts are removed, what's left. You might have to find out what you really are. Because the Rebbe is saying all that we call teva, my nature. This is who I am. That's probably the best way of expressing it. This is who I am. Take it or leave it. This is what I am. This is who I am. This is what I'm. Okay, I'm a nervous person. I get overwhelmed. I have an angry nature. I'm very volatile. I'm finicky. I flip. But whatever. All those words is saying this is how my animal is controlling me. This is how the animal inside, the animal soul, is boxing me. And the Rebbe is saying, you don't have to be in the box. You don't have to be a nervous person. You don't have to be a vengeful person. You don't have to be an angry person. You don't have to be limited by the animal. Break past it. How? Take a force stronger than animal. Well, what's my force stronger than animal? My love for God. Because God's a lot stronger than my animal soul. So when I focus on how much I love God and how much I want to be close to God and how much I want to give nachas to God, how much I want to give him pleasure and joy in my growth, and how much I want to be God-like and bring Mashiach and transform this world and any other thing that motivates you in terms of God, all that's a lot more powerful than that animal inside of you. And it will shatter its hold on you. And the Rebbe says, that's why those 20 minutes are more powerful than those 32 hours. It's not the 20 minutes. It's the energy it took to walk those 20 minutes. I remember, this is not my muscle, so b'shem omro. I remember Shimona Zukernik, she was once in Chicago, I think, for Pesach, and she came over my house, and we for praying together, I think, Sudas Mashiach. So she shared this mashal. So this is hers, or she heard it from someone. It's not mine. It was a very powerful mashal of, and I believe it's true, of meaning it's a metaphor. That's a real story, but we're using it metaphorically, of some crack troops in the Israeli army that to be in this whatever legion, you know, you go through extensive, arduous, like our version of the Navy SEALs, their version of our Navy SEALs. You go through this horrific, arduous training, and then comes like the final whatever. And if you can do it, if you finish this whole, you know, performance, you made it. And if you fell by the wayside, you didn't. And they start off with however many soldiers that have been training for months or years, however you want to address the story. And they go through many, many different things that I'm not going to bother going through, but you could imagine. And people fall off and people fall off and people fall off. And now after days, we finally see bases in sight. Bases in sight. So the last remaining people that held on for this whole crazy week or day or month or however long it was, they're like, okay, just keep walking. You just keep, you know, and they keep, their eyes are on the base, their eyes are on the base, their eyes are on the base. And they walk. And they walk into the base. And they have that sense of like, we made it. And the sergeant says, keep moving. They're like, what? Keep moving. Who said we're done? And he marches them through the base and past the base and out of the base. And they're walking past the base. And at that point, and these are hardened, tough soldiers, a number of them just cracked. They're like, what? And that's it. They're done. They said, no, forget it. If we're still walking, I'm finished. And a few stuck with him. And as they went past the base, they did like a big circle, came back into the base, and they made it. Those were the SEALs. Those are the ones. Because that final test was psychological. If you come to the finish line, you think you're completely done, you've arrived, and you're told keep marching and not to lose faith at that moment, but to keep walking. So that metaphor you could use for a lot of different things. In our context, we're talking, of course, about Mashiach, but it's also, you know, applicable in this situation of like, that's why it's really hard. Because we're not talking about someone who's not doing good. We're talking about someone who reviews 100 times. We're talking about someone who's a wonderful person, leads a very Jewish life, a very godly life, does lots of good things. Everyone thinks they're wonderful. And that's why it's really hard to say, I'm not done. I'm not done. I got to keep walking. And what could motivate you? That strong vision of how much you love God, enough to overcome the limits, the clamp nature animal soul has on you, that you can escape it. And therefore, that shifted you to a whole different status. You're a worker. Vizuhi avodah tama lebenoni. And this is the perfect, complete work of the Benoni. Meaning, a Benoni doesn't have to do this. To be a Benoni, you have to be completely in control of everything you do and everything you say and everything you think. And that's pretty impressive. But he doesn't, but it's not required in that list. And he has to always go past his limits. It's not required. If you can be complete in everything you do and everything you say and everything you think, and you're still stuck in your beautiful, godly routine of 100, it's great, you're a Benoni. If it's all routine, you might be a non-working Benoni, but you're still a complete Benoni. But when you shift even the Benoni to get to this space of breaking past the limits of a Benoni, now the Benoni is a worker. Now this is avodah tama. This is the complete avodah. Again, remember we said avodah is the key word for the road to refinement. This is the key of absolute refinement of a person who's amazingly good, but perhaps has gotten used to being amazingly good. So he's now habitually amazingly good. But now it's not happening anymore because he's demanding from himself more. So I think this is not supposed to be a chapter that overwhelms you and makes you feel suffocated. It makes you feel like I'm barely holding on and I'm definitely not looking to anything more. But I think it's a very empowering concept because it's not saying how much you have to do more that counts. It's saying anything more than your norm counts. Because anything more than your norm, you need to really remember your love for God, and with that love, do it. And that takes willpower. We say, "En lecha davar ha'omei b'fnei haratzon." Nothing withstands willpower. Willpower is a very strong, strong force inside of us. It's one of our deepest soul powers, is our willpower. So a person has a goal, a very strong goal. It could be this generic overarching goal. I want to be closer to God. It could be a very specific goal. I want to be closer to God and liberate myself from being nervous. I want to be godlike and liberate myself from getting frustrated, getting impatient, feeling overwhelmed, because those aren't godlike traits. And I want to be that close to God. I don't want these limits. And I'm going to be very focused with all my will on achieving this goal. It takes a lot of will. But we all have inside of us enormous will. And of course, being human and being victims of our evil inclination has been working on us for the past 50, 60 years, depending how old you are, to convince you you're very small. And our godly soul and our willpower says we're as huge as we want to be. So you have to disengage from the belief system of the evil inclination that you're small and weak and can't, and embrace the godly vision that the Alter Rebbe is presenting in this chapter, which is that you're powerful and hugely strong, and you can. Now there's one last type of Benoni we're going to do in these last lines. If you're looking inside, we have 5 lines to go, and I said we are finishing the chapter today, and we are. Or maybe another road in this Benoni, to arouse the natural hidden love in his heart. Now, we're in chapter 15. Chapter 15 is officially still in what's called the long road of Tanya. The long road of Tanya is chapters 1 through 17. And officially what we talk about in these chapters is creating a love for God. Starting in chapter 18, we're going to begin what's called the short road, 18 through 25. It's not because it's short road, because it's only 7 chapters and not 17, but because it's a different and, in a sense, easier approach to this vision of the Benoni, not creating a love and fear, but uncovering the natural love and fear. So at this point, we're still, our primary focus is creating a love, but we're already, we're in chapter 15, 16, 17. We're almost done this approach. So the Rebbe is already bringing in this chapter and in the next chapter and in the next chapter, we're going to sort of start foreshadowing what we're going to discuss in earnest in chapter 18, which is the option of coming close to God, not by creating the love, but by uncovering it. Now, earlier in this chapter, a great question, Sylvia. Let me just say what I'm saying, and I'll answer the question. Earlier in this chapter, we already mentioned that. Because if you remember, we said, when we first spoke about the 2 types of Beinonim, the worker and the non-worker. Why was the non-worker the non-worker? Well, because he naturally is a good person. He naturally likes to follow rules. He's not into temptation. He likes to learn. So he doesn't have to work so hard. Not only did we say he doesn't have to struggle against himself, but we said, therefore, he could suffice with natural love and fear. He said the worker, because he has so much to contend with on the inside, cannot suffice with natural love and fear. He needs to create the love and create a fear, which is a lot of hard work. But this person, uncover your natural love and fear. Like, you don't have so much resistance. You just have to take your good nature and make it a godly nature. So that's enough. So when we mentioned it in the beginning of the chapter, we were implying or saying that uncovering love and fear isn't really a worker, but for him, that's all he needs. And then remember, we said the wannabe person like that, the person who has a more out nature and he wants to have this like in squelch nature. We said to change his nature takes a lot of created love and fear. But once he arrives and he's changed himself, he could just also coast a natural love and fear, unless he wants to go beyond his norm from 100 to 101. And then again, he needs to create this love and fear because it's hard work. So we mentioned it. This was the first time we mentioned it in Tanya, was earlier in this chapter. And at that time, it made you a Benoni, but it was like a non-working Benoni. So it wasn't viewed, let's not whatever. But now we're going to bring it in again, and we're going to say something different. So before I read that, so Tzivi asked, well, which does God want? Which is preferred? So of course the answer is both, because they both have very special and different powers. Again, in the classical Tanya thinking, the first approach, creating a love and fear, is more preferred than the second, uncovering, because it's a lot harder. It's a lot more work. And therefore, God appreciates it a lot more. Anything that's difficult, just always know God appreciates. Just like we do with our children, right? Or if the child comes home with some messy scrawl and, and it's like, oh, it's so beautiful. He made it himself, as versus something picture perfect done by the teacher. We appreciate it because it's his. So when we work hard and create a love and fear, it's a lot of investment of self. It's difficult. It's thinking about God, filling ourselves with that awareness of God until we literally create this love and fear. And therefore, it's very, very, very appreciated. But the second approach, uncovering your love and fear, not only, well, it's faster and easier, but in a certain sense, it's more powerful. Because we all have this love and fear inside of us, crafted by God, coming because of that piece of God inside of us. So since this is a God-created love and fear, it has a power our man-made love and fear doesn't. So in terms of my effort and therefore its value, the first approach is more valued. In terms of the impact, it's possible the second approach is more impactful, is stronger, because what I'm accessing when I uncover it is huge. Now, when we have sort of a basic understanding of Tanya, this natural love and fear we uncover is basically as we understand it in chapters 18 to 25. as you continue studying, because this section of Tanya is 53 chapters, we keep coming back to this natural love and fear on deeper and deeper levels, which is sort of like in my vision, like if somebody gave you a beautiful box, gift wrapped, and you open it and you see something beautiful inside of it. Oh, you're so happy. And then like a while later, you're looking through all the, pretty paper that they put in the box, and you see a smaller little box you didn't notice before. And you open it and there's something even more valuable. And the story continues. Meaning within this natural love and fear, there are layers and layers and layers that God has embedded inside of us, which are very, 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 very powerful. So that's why ultimately we would like to do both. But I said that in this chapter, when we mentioned the person who's not a worker because he's only uncovering his love and fear, which was the first time we spoke about it, the Rebbe is going to say something different now. Oh, or maybe you're going to be a Benoni by doing what we're going to talk about in chapter 18 and uncovering, arousing the natural love in your heart, limshol al yada al hateva shebachalal hasmali, to control through her the nature in your left side that we were just discussing, controlling. Shezu nikra gamkein avoida. Oh, guess what? I crown you with the title of avoida. I say you are also called an oved, a worker. And we're like, what? We just said earlier in the chapter that the person that's just uncovering his natural love and fear is a non-worker because he's only uncovering his natural love and fear. He's not creating a love and fear. And now we're saying the final thought in the chapter, oh, if you want, uncover your natural love and fear and you could be a worker. So the Rebbe explains. Because you're going to use this to battle your nature. Remember, we said that means your animal, your evil inclination. By arousing that natural love in your heart. Which is not so if you're not battling at all. Then this love is not considered work at all. So the Rebbe ended off with a very powerful point, an innovative point that we maybe didn't understand until now in the chapter. What was the Rebbe bringing out by saying, I told you before that the person who uses his natural love and fear is a non-worker. Let's take out the white out. No, let's not take out the white out. The person who aroused his natural love and fear before is not a worker. But this person who's seemingly doing the same thing, he's arousing his natural love and fear. He is a worker. Why? Who caught it? What did the Rebbe say? Why is this person a worker and that person's not a worker, but they're doing the same thing? What was the Rebbe bringing out? It's so special this person was doing with his natural love and fear.
He was utilizing it to change, to work on himself, to change himself.
Exactly. Which shows us that ultimately, what's more valued? The quality of love or the quality of work? What is the Rebbe saying in the end is the definitive point?
The effort.
Exactly. The efforts, the working, the fighting, not the quality of love. So we thought that the difference between a worker and a non-worker was a qualitative difference in terms of where you're really, in the trenches creating a love. Oh, you're a worker. You uncovered your natural love. It's not as, appreciated and valued because it's easier. Harder things are more valued. Easier things are not as valued. That's true. So the love's not as valued. That is true. The love is not as valued. But the Rebbe says, that's not the point. That's not the main point. It's a true point. Yes, it is a true point. Creating a love and fear is more valued by God, 100%. Much more work to create a love and fear, 100%. But even if you want to take the easier road, said the Alter Rebbe, maybe thinking of people in the 21st century in Chicago, even if you want to take the easier road and just uncover your love and fear, that's fine. You could be a worker too. The Alter Rebbe is saying, that's not the point. The point isn't what degree, it's not like an elitist structure here. What degree of love did you achieve? No, the Alter Rebbe says. The point is, are you working or not? That's the point. So when we said earlier in the chapter, the person's a non-worker, he's a non-worker because he didn't have to fight himself, because he's a very good person and a very naturally godly person to start with. But if you're not, and if you have to fight yourself and you have to overcome your fears and apprehensions and negative nature and bad habits, great. You can be a worker. Oh, but I'm not perfect. No problem. Are you changing? Are you growing? Are you in the work of refinement? And the Rebbe says, guess what? You could just use your natural love and fear and be in the work of refinement. This is an innovative thought. It's a chiddush. Because until this point in the chapter, the way the Alter Rebbe wrote it, the implication was you couldn't. That to really change your nature, you need to create a love, which is very difficult. The Rebbe is saying, uncover your love. No problem. No problem. Uncover your love, however you inspire yourself, and work. And change. And tap into your willpower. And keep your eyes on the goal. And grow past your limits. I hereby crown you worker. You're a worker. Because that's the main quality. The main quality isn't what degree of love. Obviously, you need love. Otherwise, why would you bother? What are you doing this for? But however you get there, whatever the tool you're using, as long as bottom line you are working on yourself and changing and refining yourself and getting past your nature, your animal soul, your limits, great. Don't worry. You are a complete worker. And with that, we finish the chapter at 9:27. Wow, I said we were going to do it today. Any questions, thoughts on any of this?
When I was a kid and I went to school, some of the report cards would give you your grade for behavior. That was a disaster for me. And then and then the grade that you got in the classwork, and then how much effort you put in. How much effort you put in. So I could relate. I don't know if I'm right, but I'm relating kind of those report cards to this.
Yes, you are right. There, you are right. That's actually that's an excellent metaphor for it. The metaphor is when the teacher's grading you. Actually, it's perfect. They're not grading you on your success. They're grading you on your effort. Yes, that's a great metaphor for this, because in terms of my success, well, creating the love is far more succeeding than uncovering the love. And having, some picture perfect service is far more succeeding than like whatever, some of our mangled versions of it. But in the effort grade, God says you are trying, you are motivated, you are breaking past your nature, full marks. And I'm not going to discriminate and make your mark less because it's with a easier tool. I don't care. You're working on yourself. That's what I care about. Hasidus a lot of times looks at this concept of movement. Like when we look at the 4 elements that create the physical world and the spiritual world and the godly world and the world of evil, we have fire, earth, wind, and water. And how Hasidus looks at them is always in terms of movement. This one's stationary, this one's going up, this one, Movement is critically important. It's actually that definitive quality that we say is the difference between man and angel. We say an angel is stationary and a human being is always moving, hopefully moving up, hopefully moving closer. Otherwise, moving in the other direction. But God says, as long as you're moving toward me, I'm so happy. And you're a worker. I don't care how small that +1 is. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care what tool you use to create the +1. I don't care either. I just care that you're working on yourself, that you're working to become closer to me. And that's, I really like the metaphor, because I think we all have those report cards, and it's true. It's very accurate.
It just dawned on me.
You're still traumatized, but yeah.
By the behavior grades.
Right, only the behavior grade. That was the only one. Anyone else? Any other thoughts on this chapter?
Hi,
Or there-
hi. It's important. not to
Welcome, Civi, to this class for the first time, talking about going past your limits. You're very happy. I'm proud you made it. Okay.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. It's important not to compare. Why weren't you Zusha? Like Hashem won't ask. So that's what's coming to mind right now. That what you're saying, we all have to do according to what we think Hashem might want from us, and not compare, like, why aren't we like him or her, like that.
Right.
And just if I could connect, I remember a sikha in Parshas Beshalach, v'hamayim lehem chayma, from miyamina, smile, from the right and the left. The point that was brought out was that what's on the left, like what's not natural to us, the things that are harder for us.
Exactly. As soon as you start thinking that one, yes, that's a beautiful point of reference. That's a famous mimer about Kriyas Yamsuf. And why do we need the walls on both sides? And you're right. And that's the beauty. It's a beautiful reframing of looking at our challenges. Because a lot of times we can look at our challenges and feel, I'm so weak because I'm so challenged in these areas and so many areas. Or why is it still a problem for me? Or why is it so difficult for me to do this when everyone else is doing? Why is it so difficult for me to have a guest, when of course all my neighbors have like 6? Why is it so difficult for me to deal with my child, when my neighbor has like, so many, and you're right with that talk of the Rebbe saying, as this chapter of Tanya is saying, is celebrate it, embrace it. This is a place where you can become so close to God as you say, okay, I'm going to serve you through each one of these things. If I have a lot of them, great, no problem. I have a lot of ways of serving you. I have a lot of ways of you being happy with me. So yeah, that's a beautiful point of reference. That's Sikha. You're exactly right. Anyone else? Any other ideas?
I have a something that reminded me of something that one of the individuals just said. So it actually reminds me something very important, that it's important to remember we're all on our own level, and each time you like going from strength to strength, we're all one individual, one whole, and it's really important to really focus on the individual as a whole, like strengths, what's my purpose. And I think it's important, it got me thinking of that Hasidic story of Reb Zusha when he was about to pass away. It just kind of reminded me of that in a way. Why were you not like, when a Chassid came to him, if I'm saying this correctly, and they started asking, why weren't you like this? Why weren't you like this? Or different, I guess, people of the past who were like great tzaddikim. But at the end of the day, it's really, they asked Zusha why, that they'll be asking up in Shemayim, Zusha, why weren't you Zusha? So I think it's really important to show, it's really important to really focus on ourselves to get to where we need to be.
So Malka, you and Sivi think alike. You both reference the same story, and you're absolutely right. And it's so true, because so often we look at other people and we think, listen, Hashem, if you only did this and this for me. Hey, I'd be doing all these things for you. Just shift my situation like this and shift my situation like that and shift my situation like this. And God says, I want you exactly where you are. I put you here. I run the world. I want you exactly dealing with what I'm putting on your plate. And that's how you're serving me. So you're right. We all do have this inclination to think, if only, a different person, different time, different zone. And Hashem says, no. I didn't make mistakes. Serve me for you. And you're right. That is definitely, you looked at that as a takeaway from the chapter, and so did Sivi, and you're right. It's very strong in the chapter. Very practical. I view this as such a practical and relevant chapter of Tanya because for all of us, very, very, very applicable. So does anyone have something they would like to share to thank God, something they went through in the week where they saw his kindness, his miracles, his graciousness, his love for them?
Can I just say that since tomorrow night is Chaf Shvat, that just the fact that we have our Rebbe and our Rebbitzin, and that's like something I'm very grateful for. That's all.
That's definitely very appropriate and definitely something we all should always be. Yes, that's what's going to be that. Yes. Yes, it's amazing to think it's Chaf Shvat tomorrow night. it's amazing. And yeah. So nobody's gonna go beyond what Firma said, but someone has something else that was for them that happened this week that they would also like to thank.
Well, I have something that I've been very, very active with anti-vaccine in Israel. It's really very difficult for me. So it looks like our efforts, we have a huge group, and it looks like our efforts are working. Demonstrations are going to be taking place. Attorneys are getting involved, and so for me, it's a miracle. Baruch Hashem.
Baruch Hashem. You should continue to see the miracles. We make efforts, and Hashem makes them happen. Those are the miracles.
Baruch Hashem. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm so glad that you're seeing the miracles. Anyone else?
Thank you for your efforts. That's really special.
This isn't a miracle thing, but Rabbi Twersky, the very famous psychiatrist, psychiatrist, he did a beautiful niggin, Hoshia Samecha, that the Rebbe would sing at many Fabrengens and for a long time. And so he passed away. But I didn't really personally meet him, but from my Nefesh board, we brought him here a number of times years ago to speak and to give us insights on things. And I read a lot of his books, and I really resonated with him in that it was his learning that propelled him to whatever he did. It wasn't that he went to school to be a psychiatrist, but he went to yeshiva, to be a yid. And he was definitely like Chassidish Rebbe material, and he was. But he decided to do something that nobody really did in the field of psychology, and he really based everything on Torah. All of his books and about self-esteem and about there being a God. And so I just wanted to, I guess I'll say that I'm just very grateful for everything that he did, within this field. And I always feel that, when I work with people, that I always put Torah and Torah things, on top. And the theorists, after all these years, some of them kind of blur. Don't tell anyone, they'll take away my license. But Torah and the Rabbah and Hasidus is always up there. And whenever I can incorporate that with the person, I know that it has more of a chance of helping them to heal themselves. So thanks for letting me say that here.
No, it's to be an aliyah for his soul, to be an
Yeah.
elevation, and in his merit, his merit should be baruch, should
And
be
he
blessed.
he didn't want any eulogies, but he wanted them when they were taking him, to his kvura to sing Hoshia Samecha. He thought that that would be what would get him, further.
Merit.
Yeah.
It is a huge merit. Imagine composing a niggun that the Rebbe is singing. It's huge merit.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Very huge. Yeah, it was a very intense week. A lot of levels, definitely, the intensity on a lot of levels. But like Fruma said, we're so blessed. We're blessed. We have such strength, such unbelievable strength that we always can pull on. And that's all. That's the blessings. They are. And this week, as a Mashiach thought I definitely wanted to bring in, as Fruma said, being Chaf Bei Shvat this week, how the Rebbe, 5 years, 4 years, 4 years after the passing of Rebbe Chaim Mushka, he told us that her passing was really the demarcation line into the days of Mashiach. It's an amazing thing. I mean, we lived through it. We're not so, we don't have to be so old. We're not that young. And we lived through it. I remember when it happened, I was in Crown Heights at the time. Who knows what was going on? You knew something was going on, but who knows what? What do we understand about anything? And then like 4 years later, the Rebbe said, that was it. This passing was the demarcation line. Moving from that final era, as the Rebbe puts it, in the life of the Rebbe Rayatz, that final era. First era is all that he accomplished in his lifetime. The second era is all that happened from his passing through the work and the leadership of the Rebbe. And the final era is the passing of Rebbe Chaim Mushka. That's now the era of Mashiach. The fusion, as the Rebbe says, of all the godliness of 10 of completion and all the godliness of 11 and beyond completion. And it's all fused and it's all revealed and it's all here. So it's like we arrived. When did we arrive? Chaf Bei Shvat Tafshin Mem Ches, 1988. So what in the world have we been doing since 1988? As the Rebbe says, those final little minuscule steps. Because 1988, we already crossed the finish line. So whatever those minuscule steps are, and we've been working really hard on them, Hashem should accept our work as if we did everything he wanted, because we definitely think we have. And I'm sure he has so much joy from, as we said in this chapter, our work is what gives God that joy. We've been doing it above and beyond. So it should be enough, way more than enough. And we should see, as the Rebbe said 30 years ago, Tafshin Pei Aleph, this is going to be a wondrous year. Our end of flows, I will show you wonders. And our eyes should see them. We should see them now. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for joining in this whole chapter and in completing the chapter. If you only came for this class, that's awesome, because everything follows a completion. So this means you picked the right night to show up. And I look forward, everyone should be a very special week. Chaf Bei Shvat.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Amen.
Shakaya, thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone
Yeah,
keep
Melech,
warm, keep
thanks.
safe,
Thank you.
upright on 2 legs.
What was that?
Keep upright on 2
Careful.
legs.
Yes.
Careful.
Baruch Hashem,
Oh,
everything
safe,
is going to
safe.
melt before it freezes. Baruch Hashem.
Okay. There you go. It's okay.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so
Night.
much.
Thank you.